Hey guys, welcome back to Caffeine Questions. I threw some questions out there. I threw a quest for questions a couple of weeks ago, and I've been meaning to get back to it, but it's been hectic, so I'm gonna try to knock it out now. So I picked like 10, 15 questions out of the group that were kind of different than the ones I got before, and we'll just walk through them. People obviously love to hear me complain about officers, because somebody asked me, what's the best and worst officer you've ever served with? So I think the answer will probably surprise you. Best officer was in the infantry. Worst officer was in special forces. Imagine that. Best officer was an infantry officer I had when I was a staff sergeant in Germany called Nate Self. Nate was a brand new butter bar lieutenant from West Point. Came out, became our PL, and instantly, boom, leadership, presence. Great dude, highly intelligent, very fit, very, very good leader. He left, he was my PL for about a year, and 9 months of that year we were in Kosovo. So when he left us, he went to the Scout Platoon, and then he got recruited by Ranger Regiment. So we went to Ranger Regiment to be an officer, and the Global War on Terror kicked off. He was on a QRF in a place called Roberts Ridge when a Navy SEAL fell out of a helicopter and they had to go retrieve him. They came in the Chinook and landed, and the bird got hammered with heavy machine gun fire and AKs, and 4 of his guys got killed right off the bat. He got pinned down for a while, called in a strike. I think it was the first Predator drone strike ever onto the enemy position, but got really messed up with PTSD after that. Got out of the army. There was no mechanism in place to help people like that back then, because he was almost the first battle of the war, and he went through a lot of rough period, and eventually recovered and wrote a book called Two Wars, which is I highly recommend if you have a loved one that's been through trauma, if you've been through trauma, or if you want to just understand a little more about PTSD. So I would say Nate Self was probably the best officer I've ever had. The worst was my company commander when I was a team sergeant in 3rd Group. Guy was a dirtbag, alcoholic, blamed everybody but himself, just double standard on everything, just a worthless officer. And I think his career pretty much ended there, at least I hope it did. But he was the worst officer I've ever come across in 2 armies. Somebody asked me, is it okay to join SF at 30? I think 30 is a great age. In your 30s, you're in your prime. You know how to work out, you know how to eat, you know how to, you're a little more mature. I went in the Army at 29, the American Army. I went into SF at 35. Good to go. If you're procrastinating and you're around 30, and just go for it. If you keep letting it drag on and on and on, then you're probably lying to yourself and you probably don't want to go in. So I would just bite the bullet and just do it. Don't overthink it. What is the best order to take classes at Fieldcraft Survival? So I assume you mean firearms. We have a foundation pistol course that if you're brand new to pistols, the Personal Security 1 course is not just for beginners, it's for everybody, because it's a mindset course, and it'll teach you the law and when you can draw and when you can use deadly force and stuff like that. But we do teach you basic firearm stuff on that. Gunfighter 1 is a fairly basic pistol course, shooting from a static position. Excuse me. We do require that you have safe gun handling skills to take that course. That's it. Know how to load, unload, clear a malfunction, and not be flagging people on the line. Medical training is always vitally important. I highly recommend taking one of our 3 med courses: Basic Med, Austere Med, which we're putting one out probably tomorrow here in North Carolina, and Family Med. So Basic Med, first aid, trauma response, stop the bleed, CPR, splinter fracture, all that basic stuff. Austere Med is like a higher level of that, and it's basically geared towards people with some medical training. Well, now we're going to make you improvise, right? You're stuck in your house, Hurricane Katrina, 5 days, somebody slashed open their arm, you don't have med supplies, or you don't have enough med supplies. We're going to force you to improvise, and there's ways to do that with bleeding, with fractures, all that kind of stuff. Or you're out hiking in a survival situation and you need to improvise sustaining life, which is pretty tough to do without all the gear, but pretty vital. And the last one is family med, and that's just, I'll have doctors and nurses teach that, and it's just basically the stuff parents come across and when to take the kid to the hospital and when to treat it at home, stuff like that. Okay, so med is important. Gunfighter 2 is the higher level, and it's shooting and moving, and we highly recommend you take Gunfighter 1 before that, or some other firearms training. Content, Tavor content. So I'm working on Tavor content. I got some done today. If you don't know what Tavor is, a short bullpup rifle. I'm going to do, I could do a test and I could put out, hey, it shoots this and it weighs this and it triggers this, but it doesn't really mean anything unless you have a context. So I'm gonna side by side an AR-15 and a Tavor and compare them step by step. There's pros and cons to everything. I absolutely, having got one and shot it a little bit, I see why the Israelis went for it, because if you're in a conscript army, everybody does national service, a lot of armored vehicles, a lot of in and out of vehicles, it's a kind of jack of all trades rifle. But I will side by side that with an AR-15 and give it a really good test, and we'll see where it comes out. Working on that right now. Do you teach for fieldcraft survival? I do teach for fieldcraft survival. I teach personal security, I teach land navigation, I teach ballistics, I teach long gun, and I do a lot of other stuff. So I've been trying to pull myself out of that role a little bit, but I keep getting pulled back into it, and I think it's because I like it. But I teach a lot of courses for fieldcraft survival. Does fieldcraft survival, I thought this was an interesting one. Does fieldcraft survival hire female instructors? Yes, we do. Now, we need to do better, because the only full-time instructor we have right now is Kirsten. She runs all our personal security training, and she is taking over all the active shooter, taking the lead in the active shooter training. So she is a full-time employee. We have other instructors that are 1099 contractors who teach classes for us, like Kate, Addie, Megan, Danny, Angelica. Kate teaches edible medicinal plants. Megan teach med, Addie and Danny and Angelica, they teach personal security, but we're always looking for new instructors with the skill sets we need. And when I mean the skill sets, I mean if you think you want to get on board and help us teach medical stuff, then obviously you got to be a medic, nurse, paramedic, something like that. You want to teach personal security, you got to be a cop, you got to be a police officer, or have a fairly extensive special operations background. But if you think you want to jump on board, stay home, like if you're in a big city somewhere, like if you're in Georgia, let's say in Atlanta, then we need people in place with travel costs now for instructors to fly around the country, rent cars, stay in hotels, it's crushing us. So ideally we would have instructors in a lot of the major cities that could teach for us, and we just pay you a daily rate. So if you think that's something you want to get into, shoot me an email, kevin@fieldcraftsurvival.com, shoot me a resume, and we can chat. That's how we got Kirsten, and Kirsten is now a full-time employee and has left the police department. So you never know. When's the next breakout? So breakout went up and it sold out quick. The breakout's a very unique course. It's not something you can do every month because there's a lot of logistics behind it. If you don't know, breakout is a week-long Robin Sage type course where you're in a scenario the whole time and you never come out. So a couple of things that are very unique about it. Number one, you need to be able to run that, you really do need a special operations background. And me and Sean Kirkwood right now are the only guys that can run that course in this company. Mike does his thing out there, but other than Mike, me and Sean are the only ones that can run it. So it would, for us to run that on a regular basis, would be more work than we could take on, number one. Number two, you can't run it anywhere you want because you need to have people behind an enclosed facility. When you're running around with AK-47s and guns and doing all kinds of high-speed stuff, you cannot risk being stopped by the police and something bad happening. About 20 years ago, before I went to selection, in Robin Sage, 2 students were shot by the police because They got pulled over. They're in civilian clothes. They thought the cop was part of the scenario, so they started aggressing on him, and they had had an M4 in a bag, and they were putting it together, and the cop didn't know, and he shot both of them. I think he killed both of them. Horrific accident that never should have happened, but I can't risk that. I can't have you maneuvering around the wood line. I need to get shot by a police or shot by somebody who thinks you're a threat coming up on their campsite or on their home. So I got to put you behind a fenced, closed area, and I have those here in near Bragg. I have a couple of really good ones. Or we got to put you on private land, or so we can't do it everywhere. And then if you do it too often, you I won't compromise the standards on the course. It's got to be awesome every single time. So I think next year I'll run 4, 1 a quarter, 1 the north, south, east, and west, and maintain that high standard. But it's a phenomenal course. I'm going to push a little bit of intel out on it this year, a little bit of videoing. I'll do a daily report if I'm not too tired, because it's a lot of moving parts. But it's a phenomenal course, and there's no waiting list. You just got to be ready. We'll do a countdown. We'll launch it, and you got to sign up quick. Somebody said I can't find your podcasts on Fieldcraft Survival. The podcasts I do go into a queue with everybody else, and they get posted when it's their turn. So that could be a couple of weeks. That's why I started putting my podcasts on the YouTube channel, because some of the information is time sensitive. We're talking about upcoming training, and so we do it on YouTube, and then we push the audio to Utah to go on the Fieldcraft Survival podcast, because some people listen to it in their car. Obviously, you're not listening to YouTube in your car, so it'll show up eventually. I just did one 2 days ago with Chuck Ritter. Chuck is a sergeant major in the Army. Me and him go way back. We were on the Q course together, and we were instructors together, but he's the deputy commandant at the NCO Academy for SOF. Chuck has been shot and blown up more than anybody I know. And so we sat down and talked about that, about resilience, about getting back up every single time and getting back in the battlefield. Pretty unique and a pretty inspiring story, and he has a good personality. He's pretty funny. So check that one out. I'm going to get that one out as soon as I can, and it'll go to Utah as well and go on the queue for the Fieldcraft regular audio podcast. The YouTube stuff, somebody asked me about that. It's going okay. YouTube climbs slow, and initially I was stressed about it, but now I don't care. If I get subscribers, I get subscribers. If I don't, I don't. I just needed a place to put out longer form content, and I could get more if I was willing to do the things that other people do, but I'm just not willing to do it. I'm not gonna, if I did a video tomorrow on Green Beret Sniper teaches people how to build a ghillie suit and do stalking, and but I'm not gonna do that. I just won't. So if you have ideas for content that are not ridiculous, I always take a look at that, and I want to provide value, but I'm just not going to fall into that niche that everybody else does. Like, I was told that I did one on how to zero your rifle, and I was told if you want to get more views and subscribers and likes, you should rephrase it and make it like bait. Like, instead of saying how to zero a rifle, say you suck at zeroing your rifle, and I'm not going to do that. You probably know more about the freaking rifle than I do, so I'm not going to play that game. I don't care. I just did a podcast last week called Pineland Underground. That's how I got Chuck Ritter to do the Fieldcraft podcast. He called me up and asked me to do the Pineland Underground podcast, and I said, I'll do yours if you don't mind. So Pineland Underground is the SWIC, which is the Special Warfare Center and School. It's all the training unit within USASOC, Special Operations Command, and they do like all the Q course, free fall school, dive school, sniper school. They run all of that. So they have a podcast called Pineland Underground, and it's a good insight into special operations. It's a good place to go. They have a podcast with Kyle Lamb on there, a few other guys. So if you're interested in that stuff, then probably worth going to check out. But I did a podcast with them last week. I think it dropped on Monday, so you can check that one out as well. We're also providing medical training for the FRG, which is the Family Resiliency Group. That's the spouses and kids of Special Forces guys in SWIC, in that organization. So they have contracted us to run personal security. We've run a medical training class for spouses and kids, because if you're a military spouse, you're on your own a lot, not just in special operations, everybody. So being able to have those skills to defend yourself, but also to treat injuries and deal with all that stuff on your own is pretty important. So we're running another training event here soon for the Family Resilience Group, but I'd love to expand this program out to the 82nd Airborne, to the other active duty or National Guard groups around the country, and we'll come to you. Just shoot me an email and we will do whatever we have to do to make that happen. I think I got a bunch of questions, but a lot of them are very repetitive on stuff I've already talked about. As we move forward, driving the training hard, but I'm looking to get more instructors. I'm looking to get more female instructors in some of these big cities that we can branch out and get the training to more people. Check out this weekend in Louisiana. We have personal security going on Saturday, Sunday, medicinal plants on Sunday here. I got a military land nav class coming up, bunch of training. Go to fieldcraftsurvival.com, go to training. You can filter it by location. But yep, get out there and get trained. All right, till next time. Thanks, guys.